Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right in and uncover this absolutely fascinating, hidden biological conversation that is happening right now inside your body fat. For the longest time, we've kind of looked at our bodies in this very mechanical way, especially when it comes to weight and metabolism. But today, we're going to explore the cutting-edge science of metaflammation, the silent biology of excess body fat. Because as it turns out, there is a whole lot more going on beneath the surface than just storing away extra calories.
So, to kick things off, I've got a question for you. It might sound a little weird at first, but it is literally the key to understanding modern metabolic health. Is your fat actually communicating with the rest of your body? If you've ever wondered why carrying extra weight seems to mess with so much more than just how your clothes fit, like why it impacts your energy levels, your blood sugar, and even your heart health, well, the answer lies right here. Your fat isn't just sitting there. It's actively talking.
We really need to shatter this old myth that fat is just some inactive layer of insulation. For decades, the old view was that fat was basically just an inert storage depot, essentially sitting around waiting for a famine that, let's be honest, for most of us, never actually comes. But modern science has totally flipped the script. The new view is that fat is actually a highly active endocrine organ. When you have it in healthy amounts, it does amazing things, regulating energy, reproduction, and immunity. It is constantly communicating with the rest of your system using hormones and immune signals.
And that brings us to a really crucial term you should know, adipokines. Basically, these are chemical messengers that your fat cells, which are technically called adipocytes, are continuously releasing right into your bloodstream. You can kind of think of them like text messages sent directly from your fat tissue to your brain, your liver, your pancreas, and your immune system. These chemical text messages are exactly how your fat manages to influence your entire body, controlling everything from your appetite to your overall inflammation levels.
There's a whole cast of characters in this chemical conversation. Take leptin, for instance. It's supposed to signal satiety, basically telling your brain, hey, we're full. But in obesity, the brain can actually become resistant to it, meaning you still feel hungry even when you have plenty of stored energy. Contrast that with adiponectin, which is a highly beneficial messenger that improves insulin sensitivity. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Unlike most hormones, as your fat tissue expands, your beneficial adiponectin levels actually drop. And as they drop, inflammatory cytokines like TNF-α and IL-6 step up and take over. These guys rise as fat grows, and their impact is super harmful, actively messing with how your body processes insulin. Now, understanding these messengers is great, but it's really only half the battle. Because when it comes to body fat, location is everything. Not all fat carries the same health risks. The actual geographical location of the fat on your body completely changes the type of conversation your fat is having with your internal organs. When we compare the two primary types of fat, the contrast is honestly stark. On one hand, you have subcutaneous fat. That's the pinchable fat lying directly beneath your skin, like on your arms or thighs. While having excess amounts of it isn't ideal, it's generally a lot less harmful. Visceral fat, on the other hand, is a whole different story. This fat is stored deep within your abdominal cavity, literally wrapping itself around vital organs like your liver and intestines. Visceral fat is highly metabolically active, and it's a massive driver of toxic inflammation. Because it drains straight into the blood supply leading to your liver, it's basically dumping inflammatory compounds directly into your system. This is exactly why your waistline is usually a way better predictor of your health risks than the number on the scale. So, why exactly does visceral fat turn so toxic? Well, the danger starts when rapidly expanding fat cells literally outgrow their own blood supply. When these cells are forced to store too much energy too quickly, they swell up. This creates a suffocating, incredibly stressful state known as hypoxia, which just means a localized area of low oxygen. The blood vessels just can't keep up with the ballooning fat cells, so the cells get choked of oxygen. Oxidative stress shoots up, and cellular waste starts piling up. At this point, they're essentially blasting out a biological SOS. And guess who answers that SOS? Your immune system. This distress call summons immune cells called macrophages. Now, usually, macrophages are the good guys. They cruise around tissues to clean up dead cells and fight off infections. But in this scenario, with stressed hypoxic fat, they flood the area in huge numbers. And instead of just cleaning up, they end up releasing an absolute avalanche of those harmful inflammatory cytokines we talked about a minute ago. This completely transforms your fat tissue from a safe energy storage facility into a hostile, active, inflammatory war zone. Scientists actually have a name for this slow, silent danger. It's called metaflammation. It is this chronic, persistent, low-grade inflammation driven entirely by metabolic dysfunction. And it's super important to understand how this is different from normal inflammation. Like if you cut your finger, you get intense, acute inflammation. It gets red, it heals, and then it goes away. Metaflammation, though, it's subtle, it's persistent. It develops gradually over years, often without any obvious physical symptoms at first. Yet it's now considered a central defining feature of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Excess energy and chronic inflammation basically become biologically glued together. So how does this build into full-blown metabolic disease? It's really a domino effect. First, those inflammatory cytokines literally physically block insulin from communicating with your cells. Because the message gets blocked, your muscle and liver cells become insulin resistant. They basically refuse to open the doors to let blood sugar inside. Sensing that the sugar is still just sitting there in the blood, your pancreas starts to panic and pumps out even more insulin to try and force the issue. Eventually, the whole system just gets overwhelmed. Blood sugar rises, but here's the kicker. Because insulin is a fat storage hormone, having those elevated insulin levels makes it even easier for your body to store more fat.
And unfortunately, this traps you in a vicious cycle. As excess fat tissue expands, the cells get stressed, which summons immune cells that spike inflammatory cytokines. That drives insulin resistance, which, like we just said, makes it even easier to store visceral fat, which of course just worsens the inflammation, spinning this entire cycle faster and faster. Without any intervention, this loop can just keep running for years in the background, quietly driving the progression of chronic disease.
But wait, here's the absolute best part of all this modern metabolic research: the power of reversibility. You are not locked into this cycle. This entire process of metaflammation, driven by that excess visceral fat, is completely reversible. Seriously, even modest reductions in visceral fat can lead to massive, measurable improvements in your inflammatory markers and how sensitive your body is to insulin.
So, how do we actually shift that conversation and break the cycle? Well, it's not about some crazy crash diet. It's about leveraging foundational lifestyle strategies. Things like eating a diet packed with whole plant foods and fiber, getting regular physical activity, especially strength training, prioritizing adequate sleep, actively managing your stress levels, and severely limiting ultra-processed foods. Doing these things directly quiets down those stressed fat cells. They turn down the volume on those inflammatory signals and actively improve how your cells respond to insulin.
The absolutely crucial takeaway from this whole explainer is simple. Your weight is not just a number. The real goal behind changing how you eat or deciding to lift weights isn't just cosmetic. It's not just about how your clothes fit or what you see in the mirror. It is about profound metabolic healing. Your weight and your waistline are reflections of highly complex biological processes that are influencing nearly every single aspect of your health, deep down at the cellular level. So now that you know your fat cells are literally talking to your entire system right now, either sending out beneficial signals of balance or distress signals of metaflammation, the only question left to ask is this: what is your body trying to tell you today? Listen to those signals, use the strategies we've talked about, and take control of the conversation.